and then have basically a build pipeline execute, right? And the actual build step is sufficient to send commands to your data warehouse to perform the transformation. So one of the things that right away always strikes me looking at this is that the only parts that actually handle your transformations are these two pieces here, right? Basically just your code pipeline and your code build. I mean, the vast majority of infrastructure you're creating otherwise is related to security largely. And this is infrastructure you have to create no matter which method you use, right? But overwhelmingly, the data transformation aspect here is really simple compared to the value proposition that you're getting and the effort that you're putting into it. But that does lead us into essentially the trade-offs. And I think that there are two trade-offs or impacts of using DBT to do this at scale, right? And the first one we've already kind of explored, which is because you don't have to handle the engineering complexity, you don't have to, you're delegating all that to the data warehouse. You have more bandwidth, and your bandwidth naturally shifts towards focusing on security because your data is probably business critical and it may well have like compliance requirements. And I just want to drill on this, which is the fact that you're using very few technologies on very few machines in this case means that you have fewer points of failure. And that's really important when it comes to like reducing, attack surface area, right? And when it comes to managing credentials and using, RBAC, you have to do that for your cloud provider, and you have to do that basically in the data warehouse provider, but you don't have to manage that with respect to the tool itself. So again, fewer points of failure. I think that as a trade-off, you have a greater focus on security when you're using a tool like this. And the other trade-off, which is for me personally impactful, is the fact that you're using SQL, right? Because I'm used to using Python to do almost anything today. So for somebody like me, there is a learning curve. You have to get back into SQL, and there's no GUI that you can use instead. But for your business or for your project, there are some benefits that come from that, right? And first of all, for somebody that is non-technical, SQL is way more approachable than Python. And that's the thing. In my experience, non-technical people find programming languages like Python intimidating, and SQL less so. And that means that you're able to collaborate easier between team members. You're just less prone to siloing, and they can go in and actually change the transformations themselves. And the other thing is that one of the benefits that SQL has, if you compare it against, combination of multiple libraries and frameworks and languages, is that SQL is very stable. So first of all, it's unlikely to be obsolete, but more importantly, you're not likely to run into issues that have to do with like versioning, drift, and things like that. Since you're critical, you're using a stable proven technology for what is likely to be a critical technical piece. Yeah, but those trade-offs, I mean, that does have an impact, right? So I'm kind of curious to hear how people think this would affect, their work in their organization.
Actually, for me, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the selection process, whereby an organization decides, we have like analytics needs. We're going to go around and get some tools to help us with that. I think it'll be interesting to see, in your experience, what has been what that process has been in terms of determining the tooling and implementing it.
Oh, in terms of determining the tooling.
Because when you think of trade-offs, there's every tool has a trade-off. Like we just talked about DBT and what it does well in that regard. But in the past, like what was the experience like to try and go and determining a tool for your organization? What was the selection process like? And ultimately, when you compare, apples to apples, so to speak, across different tools, what were some of the trade-offs that your org was willing to do in adopting particular technology?
I mean, in my experience, and I'd be very happy to hear other people's opinion on this, but in my experience, end users, if you're looking at people that are using, for example, reporting tools, find it fairly easy to jump into DBT because again, it is using SQL. And once you see the folder structure, it is relatively self-evident, right? So it's not as intimidating as other tools. If you're using other tools, somebody's gonna have to come to you and ask you to find free time to enable them, basically. So it's definitely more approachable. That's what I've seen.
I think in my own experience, it was like two extremes. On one end, it was the tools that the developers felt more comfortable with. So if you had you like Python, you gravitate towards like Python tools and suffer the consequences of that choice. And I just picked Python as an example, but they were a variety of tools. And the other extreme was basically ease of use. So it's like, let's get something that everybody understands and that everybody can use, even if it means that it comes with a baggage of other tools that you have to kind of put into the mix to make that low entry point. So those are the two patterns that are observed for the most part.
Yeah, and I've seen that as well. And I think whenever you're dealing with tool selection, you have to pick your emphasis, right? And when you're emphasizing for a simpler tool for this, it gives you the bandwidth to focus, to use your Pythonic skills to do, for example, data analytics or machine learning or something where it's really going to provide value proposition. For me personally, like building these kinds of pipelines with Python, it's really satisfying. Like it's like doing the ultimate Sudoku, but the end result is that it is a lot to manage, and there's a huge learning curve, and it takes a long time to bring other people into the fold.
Yeah, that's actually the first thing that came to mind. Thinking on this, like the immediate, I wouldn't call that a trade-off necessarily. Well, I mean, kind of. SQL has the advantage of being the lingua franca of most specialists, either on the data or the programming side, right? Like everybody that knows how to code an app likely knows SQL, and then on the other side, well, everybody that knows how to do data knows SQL, right? Like they have to. So in a world where we're trying to break down data silos and we're trying to integrate data across entire organizations and try to not limit it to departments, to me, making a move in that direction, like where SQL becomes kind of the foundational language with which you interact with data at every step, right? Like not only querying but transforming as well. That's a great way to harmonize your team and get everybody to work together, right? That's kind of what you were saying earlier, but you made a lot of references to less technical people, when at the end of the day, I think it's really just a matter of being like less, I guess, app dev centric people.
Well, even for a very technical person, you're always trying to minimize switching costs, right? And when you're able to specify multiple things with one language as SQL, inevitably you have less switching cost.
Yeah, that's a good point.
How about you, Milan, Jean-François? What's your impression of this?
Yeah, trade-offs. Yeah, we have like a group of different peoples with different skills. Like you have data engineers mostly working on pipelines, data warehouses. We have BI developers mostly working with tools like Looker, and we have the data analysts, which mostly do SQL. So it's a bit hard to put everybody together and try to find workflows. How are we going to work with these tools, and follow best practices and have like code reviews, code versioning, and CI/CD deployment and stuff like that. Because at our place we have tools that are not always friendly for a developer workflow. Like for example, trying to implement the Zeppel to provide like notebooks to our data analysts so they can write Python without having to know all the basic stuff of Python, how to build a virtual environment, so just providing stuff ready to use for them, so they just concentrate on what they know, like data analysis, and just writing the minimum amount of code that they need to. But there are trade-offs in those tools, and we work with them. So we're trying right now to define like good practice workflows around the tools that we have in the organizations. So me, I'm a developer, so I want to, have all the best practices with code versioning, etc., and reviews. But on the other side, not all people knows about these developments workflows. So this is kind of trade-offs that we have when choosing tools and trying to develop stuff.
I guess same thing here. If you have different, if you have tools that don't work well with CI/CD pipelines, or are not easy to use under version control like SSIS, it's just a nightmare. It's very difficult to work on anything larger scale. So going towards something that enables CI/CD or DevOps or DataOps, that it's called these days, it's actually not a bad thing. And the other thing is, I guess what Jean-Francois was saying is that you have different teams. So like what the current data landscape, the way it looks like, you have different teams. You have your data lake team, you have your extraction pipeline team, you have your traditional data warehouse people that live in star schemas and whatnot, and you have your BI people, and everybody is speaking completely different language. It's very, very difficult to put it all together to make a cohesive team that can deliver that can deliver basically functionality all the way from extraction to BI. You would need currently you would need a cloud engineer that can stand up something for the extractors and then actually build them. You need a data lake people that can load the data using Databricks or something like that. Then you have the modeling people, and then the data warehouse people, and then the BI people. So you need maybe 4 or 5 different skill sets to get the stuff done. Going towards something that just requires SQL. That seems to be very good trade-off to make. Yeah.
Anyone else? So yeah, I mean, honestly, for myself, again, I'm also a, I like to do everything myself. If I could reinvent the wheel, I would, to be perfectly honest. But there's definitely from my point of view, there's definitely like it's a tactical choice to have all this done in SQL, and kind of have that benefit your organization throughout, right? And having less to manage, like in my view, it just improves your bandwidth, which is very limited today as the complexity of everything is growing, right? And what we call best practices is inflating. So this is a constant concern for me. I've left some resources. It's very easy to find DBT's documentation. But if anybody's interested in learning it, I highly recommend just running through the introduction. It's very quick and it's pretty thorough. And if anybody wants more serious security around securing workspaces to secure their development environment, I also have a link which I will share in the chat.
Will those slides be made available to everybody?
I believe so.
Okay.
No, I mean, how would you recommend we distribute the slides?
Well, typically you can either share them as a what's the name? Either a slide share or a PDF that we can post on the page, on the meetup page.
we're getting to the end. I just wanted to remind that we also have the Slack channel going on. I'm going to post the link after, where we're trying to get people to have these conversations online as well.
Yep, very good point. So yeah, we're actually hosting this DataOps meetup across Canada right now. So we have one in Montreal, one in Toronto, one in Vancouver. So we're trying to build a Canada-wide DataOps community. So you guys are very welcome to join us over there. I would also like to ask you all to volunteer yourselves if you want to present something, if you think you have something interesting you could bring up or contribute to the group, would be very appreciated. This is a community event, of course, so we really want to make the emphasis, to put the emphasis on the community. Today we had Nasko and Nadji, both from Infostrux, this meetup sponsor at the moment. But we would like to not always keep it in the family for the next few ones. So definitely, please do reach out. So excellent. Well, if we're reaching the end, I would really like to thank both Nasko and Nadji. This was a great presentation. So maybe give like an awkward Zoom hand. Okay, I'm the only one. All right, thank you. And if there's anything else, please feel free to stay on and have a quick chat. We'll keep the Zoom open for a few more minutes. And apart from that, I thank you for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you again at the next event.